This is Kurtop. Here are 100 ancient artifacts modern technology can't replicate. Maya blue paint. Scientists are still studying the technology behind the creation of Maya blue paint, a pigment that retains its color for thousands of years. Analysis of ceramic and fresco samples shows the base is natural indigo mixed with palygorskite, a clay with microscopic channels. When heated, indigo molecules get trapped in these channels, making the paint resistant to moisture, sunlight, and chemicals. Archaeologists discovered this pigment on ritual objects, temple walls, and ceramics from the 8th and 9th centuries AD, and the paint remains unfaded after centuries of exposure. Modern research has shown that a similar structure can be used to create new long-lasting pigments and protective coatings. The Maya technology became an example of how ancient chemistry defined its era by creating a material that modern industry only achieved thousands of years later, a cake from World War II times. Archaeologists sometimes find charred food remains, but in order to figure out what kind of charcoal it is, a full analysis has to be done. However, this cake, even though it turned into charcoal, still kept its recognizable shape. This happened on the night of March 28, 1942. The Royal Air Force of Great Britain bombed Lübeck, an ancient city on the coast of the Baltic Sea. This was revenge for the Nazis bombing the English city of Coventry in 1940. The walnut cake was just unwrapped when bombs fell. The house's floors collapsed into the basement, but the cake survived and was soon charred by fire. In general, Lübeck has a very rich history. It was founded in 1143 and remains one of the best preserved medieval cities in Northern Europe. The walnut cake has been moved to the lab responsible for preserving the relic. There could have been compounds in the bombs that settled on the cake, and these residual compounds might react with the substances that the restorers will use. All of this will need to be checked. Artifacts at the bottom of the lake. Scientists have found obsidian tool artifacts in Lake Huron that are 9,000 years old, and they are more than 4,000 kilometers from their place of origin in Oregon, United States of America. Obsidian fragments were discovered during underwater excavations in Lake Huron. These are the oldest confirmed obsidian samples from the Western country ever found in the eastern continental United States. Researchers say these tiny obsidian artifacts offer insights into social connections in North America 9,000 years ago. Archaeologists also found hunters' huts 30 meters underwater, where the water level was once much lower. These artifacts are important as they show the value of underwater archaeology. I should note that obsidian is an igneous rock, a type of volcanic glass formed as a result of rapid cooling of lava. Sarcophagi for the sacred and beloved. Ancient Egyptian culture is known for its exceptional preservation of the dead, a care often extended beyond humans. No other ancient civilization left behind such a large number of animal burials. In the lives of the Egyptians, animals always played a huge role. Since ancient times, Nile Valley inhabitants shared their land and river with these animals. Hippopotamuses and crocodiles, cats and jackals, ibises and falcons, monkeys, lions, cobras, and scarab beetles were all part of the universe and inevitably became part of the mythological picture of the world. Around 5,000 years ago, before the pharaoh's state existed, the sacred animal was kept at the temple as an oracle or as an assistant in healing ailments, and was held in great honor, especially if the Egyptians believed that it was successfully fulfilling its duties. After death, this creature was properly buried, mourned, mummified, and placed in a custom sarcophagus. Thutmose's cat was named Tamuit, which means she is a cat with a capital C. When Tamuit's earthly journey came to an end, she rested in a limestone sarcophagus, covered with inscriptions and images that were meant to help the animal overcome all the difficulties of the afterlife journey and successfully be reborn in eternity. Ant Skull, Catamarca, Argentina. Construction workers were digging a trench for a water pipeline and came across a row of burial urns. They found a human skull with an unusual shape, which the local press called the Ant-Man's head. The forehead juts forward, the crown extends back, and the skull appears as if it was squeezed in a vice. People first thought of aliens and genetics, but archaeologists soon calmed things down. Between the 3rd and 12th centuries, the Cienaga and Aguada cultures lived on these lands, and they practiced artificial cranial deformation. It was simple. The baby's head was wrapped in cloth fixed between boards, and the soft bones slowly changed shape. You're probably wondering why. It was all about beauty, belonging to a group, social status, just like today with tattoos or body modifications. It's worth noting that there's almost no evidence of harm to health from such practices. A child's skull is flexible, and the brain grows to fill the available space, so most deformed skulls show no signs of trauma or developmental delay. Another explanation is hydrocephalus, a fluid buildup noted by Katie Dusson-Cobbis. However, in that case, we would also expect other changes like thinned bones and asymmetry. Such a skull is a good example of why we shouldn't immediately classify such finds as historical anomalies. Sometimes a strange shape is not a message from aliens, but a very human desire to look like others. The Royal Sapphire. Before you is a ring from the late 14th to early 15th century, from the time when the English crown passed from Richard II to Henry V. The solid blue crystal is carved from a single piece of sapphire. The craftsman made the stone itself into a monolithic ring instead of setting it in a mount. Such work required not only a rare gemstone, but also the use of diamond powder, the only abrasive capable of polishing corundum. In the Middle Ages, sapphire was considered the stone of justice. Kings and bishops wore it when making agreements. It was believed that the crystal would cause anyone who broke an oath to suffer from a fever. On the cutting platform, there's a small step where the jeweler shaved the surface to prevent the cutter from slipping. The ring weighs less than 10 grams, but in the 15th century, its price was equal to that of a good knight's armor. It probably belonged to someone among the high-ranking vassals of the court. The documents identify the sapphire as part of the Norwich hoard, buried during the Lollard turmoil and found 5 centuries later. Fossilized fish high up in the Himalayas. The mighty Himalayas, also known as the roof of the world, rise to incredible heights, sometimes disappearing among the clouds. Here are some of the highest peaks, including Everest, which stands at 8,849 meters, making it the tallest mountain in the world. At these record-breaking heights, the air is thin, temperatures are extreme, the land is arid, and rocks are bare as if it has always been this way. We say it seems because researchers have found marine fossils hundreds of kilometers from the nearest sea. The Spiti Valley is rich in fossil evidence dating back 540 million years, which attracts paleontologists from all over the world. In Nepal, ammonite fossils are found along the Kali Gandaki riverbed. In addition, brave mountaineers who have reached the summit of Everest have brought back rock fragments in which fossils of sea lilies have been found. It's hard to imagine that this vast area of our planet was once the ocean floor, with fish and other marine creatures. Billions of years ago, a massive geological event called continental drift took place. Before that, the world as we know it did not exist. Instead, there were supercontinents or giant landmasses that were part of the continents. After learning this, you begin to believe more in the reality of the great biblical flood. Devil's Slide. On the slope of the picturesque Weber Canyon in Utah, United States of America, there is a giant stone formation called the Devil's Slide. In essence, it is almost a straight, open chute, large enough to suit a giant. Devil's Slide. It is a structure made up of a series of parallel, weather-resistant slabs up to 12 meters high, with an inner groove 6 meters wide. This Utah landmark is 60 meters long. The rigid slabs forming the parallel walls are joined by limestone, a softer, more pliable material that has gradually been eroded by rain and wind. The stone formation remains well preserved today. The history of the Devil's Descent has many contradictions and unanswered questions. Scientists think the bordered rut appeared recently in geological terms, but the stone fin on the mountainside formed 70 million years ago. Water, specifically a body stretching from Arizona to the Colorado River, caused this transformation about 170 to 180 million years ago. Gradually, the water washed the limestone out of the harder layers, forming a giant slope, and when the sea dried up, the rut was left on land. By the way, this kind of formation isn't found only in Utah. There's a second similar structure not far from the first one, in the neighboring state of Montana. The Yellowstone Devil's Slide isn't as remarkable, but it's still impressive, and this could be evidence that both ruts are man-made. Nature can surprise us, but it's unlikely it created two identical landmarks thousands of kilometers apart. This was likely how ancient people built dams, drainage, and fortification walls. Several 19th century drawings of the Devil's Descent show the structure looking completely different. It seems these were two stone staircases raised above the ground, which people used for some purpose. Judging by the condition of the ridge, the landmark from Montana looked exactly the same. The exact reasons for the construction of the Devil's Descent may never be found, but their existence suggests that highly advanced technological civilizations once lived on the territory of America. By the way, it's quite possible that people used the chutes as ancient quarries for extracting minerals, since the search for new materials was the main goal of developing peoples. One of the most complex fishing traps, the wooden stakes in the shallow waters of Vancouver Island, puzzled historians for years, until a new study showed that they represent an ancient method of fishing. Over 150,000 of these sticks are regularly revealed at low tide in the Comox estuary on Vancouver Island, Canada. Archaeologists found that these are the remains of hundreds of ancient fish traps built by indigenous peoples of Canada about 1,300 years ago. It took decades to link these ancient stakes to Canada's early inhabitants, until archaeologist Nancy Grin suggested her theory. Before Grin and other experts, scientists overlooked the artificial technologies of the region's ancient inhabitants. Even Comox community members on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, didn't know their purpose or appearance. Researchers estimate there were 150,000 to 200,000 stakes forming the core of 300 fish traps in the shallow marshes. And such scale clearly shows how remarkable engineers the people who lived here were. Experts also note that the traps were based on a deep understanding of fish behavior, as well as the large tidal ranges in the region. It was an impressive blend of sustainable fishing and control of species spawning rates. The ancient fish traps were made in two styles, heart-shaped and chevron-shaped, and were lined with removable panels. This allowed water in, but blocked fish. So as the tide rose, fish entered the trap's center. When the tide fell, they were left in shallow water for easy collection. This even allowed people to control the spawning rate in local stream systems and ensured that they caught only as much fish as they needed to meet their needs without harming the overall stocks. If the spawning rate was too low, they chose not to catch the fish to let the population grow. Armor made of 6,000 scales. Archaeologists in China's Jiangxi province made an astonishing discovery in the tomb of Liu He, the ruler of Haihun from the Western Han dynasty. They found a scale composite armor that is over 2,000 years old. This find shows the advanced craftsmanship of the Han era and is fundamentally different from the typical single material armors of that time. According to the report from the Provincial Institute of Archaeology and Cultural Relics, the plates were made of lacquered iron, copper, and leather, with many of them being only 1 centimeter wide and just 0.2 centimeters thick. Restoration took about 2 years, with specialists assembling roughly 6,000 pieces found stacked in the tomb's armory beside swords and knives. According to Yan Jun, the leader of the excavation team, their arrangement and size demonstrate an incredible delicacy of craftsmanship that was previously unknown for Han Dynasty armor. An Egyptian anchor with an image of the goddess of writing. The discovered object was a unique 3,400-year-old Egyptian anchor decorated with images of the goddess Seshat. The ancient anchor was made from a single piece of limestone, had a trapezoidal shape with rounded corners, and there was a hole at the edge of the upper part through which a rope was threaded. The scientists at the site suggested the anchor was found after a recent storm washed away the sand where it had been buried for over 3,000 years. Historians theorize the anchor belonged to a Bronze Age vessel and was likely lost in a shipwreck. Similar anchors have been found in this area before, but this one is unique because it has inscriptions that may have been taken from a wall inside a temple. This discovery has raised many questions. For example, Where did the engraved stone come from, and what was it before? Where was the vessel headed, and what type of vessel was it? The anchor's strangest symbol was a woman writing at a table. Historians say this was the goddess Seshat, the ancient Egyptian goddess of writing. Egyptians worshipped her, built temples for her, and considered her both a divine scribe and the mistress of libraries. When studying the anchor, archaeologists noticed that the face of the goddess was very clear, which indicates that the slab was reused and had previously been a sacred object that was destroyed as a result of an earthquake. The Book of Tears has blank pages, yet holds secret knowledge. In 1939, a monk from Andorra met Adolf Hitler. Some sources report that the German leader was very interested in the occult and wanted to obtain the mysterious Book of Tears. This artifact's history is mysterious. In the 9th century, a San Marino monk made a pact with the devil, renounced faith, and became a hermit. Later, he was found in a cave. Evidence showed the monk lived alone there for some time. Rather than worshiping God, he worshipped the devil. 2 girls' bodies were found here, surrounded by pictograms and various witchcraft items. The monk lay on the floor, smiling blissfully. There was a book in his hands. Surprisingly, there were no texts or images on the pages of this book. Over 260 blank pages bound in animal skin. For 400 years, this artifact was kept in a San Marino monastery, where monks performed rituals to cleanse it. People believed that lifting the seal of darkness would reveal divine scripture. Finally, in the 13th century, drawings appeared on the pages of the mysterious folio, depicting infernal creatures, as well as details of rituals connected to the devil and his minions. An amazing detail is that the images only appeared after human tears fell onto the pages. Frightened monks sent a messenger with the book to the Vatican, to the Basilica of Constantine. After that, news about the artifact vanished until the late 19th century. In 1887, a monk from Andorra had visions that a man in military uniform would open the mysterious book, and hordes of demons and succubi would descend upon the world. In 1939, Hitler met with a clergyman from Andorra, but the details remain undisclosed. But after that, the monk was sentenced by a tribunal and never returned to his homeland. He reportedly urged Germany's leader not to invade other countries or seek demonic artifacts. There is another version that supposedly this book was given to the Andorran monk because the Vatican refused his request, which means they simply did not have the folio in their possession. It's well known Hitler was close to the Pope. If he needed the book, he likely would have gotten it. Generally, there are many artifacts with unknown origins. Experts who have studied this issue are convinced that there are so-called devilish objects, meaning artifacts created by infernal beings or with the help of secret occult knowledge. These things cause destruction and evil, so they must be kept from those with harmful intentions, or the earth could face an apocalypse. Sadly, these artifacts can't be destroyed. There is a concept of an energy cocoon. It envelops any object, and it tunes that object for creation or destruction. It turns out that all magical artifacts, and the Book of Tears is one of them, can also be reprogrammed for creation. An ancient pendant with a design. At first glance, this small rounded plate with dots doesn't seem like anything special. Radiocarbon dating shows this is among our ancestors' most important artifacts. The oldest ornament made by Homo sapiens, found in the territory of Eurasia. A small mammoth bone pendant with decorative holes was discovered in Stynia Cave, Poland in 2010. Scientists needed to determine the pendant's exact age to assess its cultural significance, and were thrilled with the result. It's understandable since analysis revealed the pendant is around 41,500 years old. It was created in the late Paleolithic, when Homo sapiens had just begun to spread across Europe. The pendant measures just 4.5 centimeters long and about 3.7 millimeters thick. It features a long, uneven ring of at least 50 dots. Scientists have found this style of pattern on other similar mammoth ivory ornaments discovered in France and Germany. In Poland's Stynia Cave, where the pendant and a horsebone awl were found, both Homo sapiens and Neanderthals lived at different times. Artifacts were found in a layer containing traces of both groups. Moreover, Analysis showed that weather conditions and human activity could have influenced the placement of objects in the cave. That's why it was so important to date the finds to confirm exactly that they were made by Homo sapiens. Scientists suggest that the owner threw away the pendant when it broke. It is unknown what the ring of dots meant. Perhaps it's a sketch of the moon's movement across the sky during the year, or maybe the owner marked hunting successes with the dots, or he or she simply liked the pattern. The goddess of death, Lemba, Cyprus, a small limestone figurine from 3,500 years before our era, showing a broad-shouldered female silhouette with arms akimbo and a stump-like head. These figures are often seen as fertility statuettes, but this one was different. Lord Elfand was the first modern owner. Within 6 years, his entire family of 7 died, and the figurine was passed on. And in the next 3 households, similar stories happened. Sudden deaths, illnesses, and accidents. When the new owner suspected a connection, he donated the figurine to the Royal Scottish Museum in Edinburgh. Rumors intensified when a curator working with the exhibit died within a year. That's how the nickname Goddess of Death was born. What's real and what's legend? There are few documents about the early owners, and the dates don't always match up. The curse likely began with coincidences and media stories, but the frightening events have secured the figurine's place in cursed collections, next to Egyptian mummies and the Bassano vase, which is ironic since it was probably created as a symbol of life and fertility. A figurine of a goddess believed to bring children, not take them. Now, the exhibit includes a disclaimer. Archaeology is fact. The curse is cultural interpretation. If I'm talking about strange discoveries, I can't ignore the Lembe goddess. It's rare for a small piece of limestone to inspire a legend that lasted 4,000 years, traveling from a Cypriot village to a museum display. The Whales Cemetery of Chukotka. In remote Chukotka near the village of Yanrakanot, a drone captured one of the most unusual places in the Arctic, the Whales Cemetery. On the tundra shore lie the bones and skulls of sea giants, collected here over decades. The locals consider this place sacred. Whaling in Chukotka has ancient roots and is still allowed in a limited form. Harpooned whales are brought ashore, part of the carcass is ritually returned to the sea, and the bones are placed along the coast. In the 1990s, due to food shortages, commercial whaling was temporarily allowed, and the remains began to be stored on the outskirts of settlements. Over time, they created clusters called whale cemeteries. The Chukchi performed rituals to appease sea spirits, placing whale skulls upright so the animal's spirit could see the ocean and find its way to be reborn. These traditions continue today, though whaling now follows International Whaling Commission regulations. The whale cemetery in Yanrakinat has become a kind of symbol of the connection between humans and nature. For the local residents, this place honors the cycle of life and respect for animals that give us food and warmth, not death. Ritual rice. In the northern cave of Ritidian, archaeologists found rice husk imprints on ceramics that are at least 3,500 years old. The only traces are a thin starch film and phytoliths, but that's enough to confirm that the settlers reached Guam, carrying rice across 2,300 kilometers of open ocean. Fields, terraces, and sickles were never found, indicating the grains were kept for rituals, perhaps annually, to remind ancestral spirits of their distant home in Taiwan, in the hands of the islanders. Rice became a symbol of origin, making tiny pottery traces more significant than a whole cemetery of bone harpoons. Scythian silver with images of deities. Russian archaeologists found a rare ancient silver ornament depicting Scythian deities in a Middle Dawn burial mound, calling the discovery sensational. The ornament miraculously survived in burial grounds that had been looted back in ancient times. The ornament was found in mound number 7, located in the central part of the WWII burial ground. After years of tractor plowing, it was about 1.5 meters high and 40 meters in diameter. The main burial dates to the 4th century before Christ. The rectangular grave in the center of the mound impresses with its size, 7.5 by 5 meters, according to archaeologists. This is the largest grave found in the WWII group. Its covering was supported by 12 massive oak pillars along the edges, and 5 in the center. Numerous small gold hemispherical plaques were found in the tomb, which were once sewn onto the bedding of the burial bed. An iron knife and a horse rib, a spearhead and dart tips, horse harnesses, a jug, a goblet, and the severed jaw of a young bear. A silver overlay, almost 35 centimeters long, lay apart from all the other items, several meters away from the skeleton. Originally, it was fastened with numerous silver nails to a wooden base, which has almost completely disappeared. Which object this overlay decorates remains an open question. On the overlay's left, creatures in a heraldic pose face each other, pressing their paws together. On the right side, 2 round plaques were riveted to the overlay, each depicting an anthropomorphic figure standing surrounded by 2 griffins. The largest hoard of Anglo-Saxon gold coins. 4 gold objects and 131 coins were discovered in a field in the west of Norfolk County. The person who found the hoard wished to remain anonymous. It is known that he or she discovered the valuables using a metal detector and then notified the relevant authorities. A police officer found 10 more coins and tried to sell them. Due to his illegal actions, he was arrested and will serve 16 months in prison. Garrett Williams, an early medieval coin specialist at the British Museum, said this is a highly important find from the same era as the Sutton Hoo burial in Suffolk, where an undisturbed burial ship was found. The first gold coin in the field in Norfolk was discovered in 1991, but it was only in 2014 that new artifacts were found, dating to around 610 AD. Some of the coins were minted by the Byzantine Empire, but most belonged to the Merovingian kingdom. I was searching for gold, but I found a rare meteorite. 6 years ago, Australian David Hoole found a large reddish stone in Maryborough Park with a metal detector. He brought it home and unsuccessfully tried to break it open, hoping to find a gold nugget inside. However, it turned out that the stone itself was much more valuable than gold. Still unable to open his find, David Hoole asked the Melbourne Museum to help identify it. After thoroughly studying the artifact, museum specialists wrote a scientific paper about the meteorite, which is 4.6 billion years old, and gave it the name Maryborough. Using a laser saw, the scientists managed to separate a small fragment from it, which turned out to have a high iron content. On the cut, scientists found tiny frozen droplets of metal-rich minerals called chondrules. Meteorites offer the most affordable way to study space, revealing the age, formation, and chemical makeup of our solar system. Some help us look deeper into the history of the Earth. In others, scientists find stardust that is older than the solar system itself. With its help, we can learn how stars were formed and developed, giving birth to the elements of the periodic table. Scientists aren't sure how or when the meteorite landed, but they have some theories. This particular meteorite most likely comes from the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and it was pushed out of there by several asteroids colliding with each other. Carbon dating has shown that the meteorite landed on the planet between 100 and 1,000 years ago. Scientists note that the Maryborough meteorite is a much more valuable find than gold. This is one of 17 meteorites ever recorded in the Australian state of Victoria, and this is the second largest chondrite mass after the huge 55-kilogram specimen discovered in 2003. Medieval chair. The chair from Trossingen is a rare and valuable example of early medieval furniture. This wooden chair was found in the burial chamber of a man in Trossingen, Germany, and dates to around 580 AD. Crafted from maple and ash, it shows the ancient artisan's exceptional skill. The chair is remarkably well preserved because the burial was located in a marshy area, which created favorable conditions for preventing the decomposition of organic materials. Though the wood has darkened over time, it has kept its structure, letting archaeologists study its construction and manufacturing style. The find is part of the collection at the Baden-Württemberg Archaeological Museum in Constance, Germany. The Blood Falls. Antarctica is a continent of records and one of the strangest places. A crimson stream flows from the Taylor Glacier. The ice here should be sterile, but the meltwater is deep red. Scientists recently thought iron caused the rusty color. It seemed clear, but a 2023 analysis showed otherwise. They found nanospheres in the water, tiny virus-sized particles with iron cores and calcium-aluminum coatings. While they're under the ice, the color is unnoticeable, but as soon as the water escapes outside, the shell instantly oxidizes, and the stream turns into liquid blood. The source is an ancient salt lake sealed off millions of years ago. Salt lowers the freezing point and at the same time releases heat during crystallization, so the water stays liquid even at -10. Bacteria inhabit a closed, salty system isolated since before modern ecosystems formed on Earth. They feed on sulfur compounds and survive without light or oxygen. It's a direct scenario for possible life under the ice of Europa or Enceladus. The result, a blood-red waterfall, is not mysticism or algae, but a demonstration of how chemistry, microbes, and geology can together create an absolutely alien scene on our own planet. Fossils of small humanoids. In April 2021, a Canadian archaeological research group prepared to study Whitmore Ridge in Antarctica to determine if dinosaurs once lived on the continent. 9 people joined the expedition, which was led by archaeologist and part-time doctor Dr. Marley. After clearing the snow, the archaeologists found a stone block covered in ancient creature imprints. It was here that the archaeological work began, with the researchers digging half a meter into the rock. What they found was astonishing. Fossilized remains of humanoids, just 20 to 25 centimeters tall. They discovered 6 such specimens and over 30 dinosaurs. Dr. Marley avoided quick conclusions, sending 5 samples to institutes in the United States and Canada, and kept 1 to study himself. At the moment, there is no official result from their analyses. The preliminary conclusion is that both the rock and the fossilized remains are over 600 million years old. But if this isn't just another pseudo-sensation, then what conclusions can be drawn? In fact, there are many possibilities, from the arrival of aliens to an ancient humanoid race. Unfortunately, it's impossible to test the fossils for DNA to determine if they're of earthly origin. The international community awaits the research results on the mysterious discovery. An ancient Roman road was found near Venice. At the bottom of the Triporti Canal in the Venetian lagoon, several meters deep, scientists discovered an unusual ancient structure. We know the sea level used to be lower, and Venice looked very different then. Moreover, judging by the artifacts found, the Romans settled in these places long before the legendary city was founded. However, some archaeologists believe these artifacts came from nearby towns. Back in 1985, scientists discovered something resembling a road at the bottom of the canal. High-resolution sonar allowed archaeologists to obtain an accurate map of the seafloor. Between 1978 and 2016, diver archaeologists descended to the bottom multiple times. They saw firsthand what the bottom looks like and collected samples. Research continued in 2020. The road extended about 1,140 meters along the ancient shore. Earlier discoveries of large nearby structures, likely a port and road-like traces in the Scanella Channel, support this conclusion. The road beneath the Triporti Channel was likely part of a larger road network in a sizable port city. This supports the idea that Romans not only traveled through, but also lived in the Venetian lagoon area. The ancient version of the legend of King Arthur. Scholars have published the first complete translation of a fragment of the oldest known version of the story about King Arthur. They analyzed the handwriting and linguistic style to confirm the manuscript's origin and history. The Bristol Merlin manuscript consists of 7 fragments of parchment, retelling a part of the legend about Arthur. It was found a couple of years ago in the binding of books from the early 15th century. The manuscript itself was written between 1250 and 1275. Judging by the Old French language and writing style, it was written in northern France. Yes, the legend of King Arthur was popular throughout France. The manuscript tells the story of Sud Vulgate du Merlin. This is not the oldest known version of this particular story. However, it is believed that it was first recorded in 1225. So the retelling in the Bristol Merlin can be considered modern, according to historian Laura Chunnan Campbell, who specializes in Old French texts about Merlin at Durham University. Medieval legends about Arthur are similar to the Marvel Universe. It was a connected fictional world with its own rules and a set of well-known characters who appeared and interacted with each other in different stories. This excerpt from the second volume describes how Merlin became Arthur's advisor and the turbulent early years of Arthur's reign. Arthur appeared in stories as early as the 9th century, but only gained the crown and his familiar character in the 12th century. By the time the manuscript was written, Arthur's legend had greatly expanded in length and depth. The handwriting in the Bristol Merlin shows it was likely written by two people, probably a teacher and student, as seen in the image. Unlike other versions, this Arthurian legend retells an earlier version. For example, the Holy Grail is absent here, even though it had already appeared in the works of French poet Chrétien de Troyes by the late 12th century. They changed the alphabet. A quipu is a bundle of ropes with knots, featuring a main thread with many colored cords. For years, people thought the Incas just used the knots to count corn and taxes, like an old abacus. A team of linguists and programmers uploaded 21 complete quipus from a museum in Peru into a neural network. The algorithm analyzed the color of the rope, how far it hung from the main thread, which knots were tied, and in what order. The machine quickly detected repeating patterns, such as identical words in long text. The knots on the yellow rope matched grain storage records, while those on the red rope were linked to warrior lists. Scientists compared this with colonial Spanish documents and realized that the quipu conveyed meaning much richer than simple counting. For example, a bundle of green rope plus 3 short knots almost always marks a place for storing corn, while red plus a double knot can mean a tax for the army. If proven on many samples, the quipu could be seen as a true writing system, not just a knot calculator. Then the Incas will have to be moved from the list of civilizations without letters to the list of peoples who simply chose a different rope-based alphabet. A prehistoric butterfly. Imagine a public restroom that's 250 million years old. In northwest Argentina, a rock is covered with fossilized piles from ancient dicynodonts, hippo-sized herbivores. Scientists open a coprolite, expecting just plant mush, but under the microscope they find shimmering microscopic scales. Tiny plates that today cover the wings of butterflies and moths. There are almost 100 of them, and each one fits perfectly into the structure of modern lepidopterans. The layer is 247 million years old, 46 million years older than any known butterfly fossils. This means the first nocturnal flyers soared over prehistoric forests before flowers or beetle pollinators existed. The species will be named Amphitryon eloizia, in honor of a young researcher who managed to describe the discovery but passed away from cancer. A tiny scale bridges the huge gap between the molecular clock of evolution and the stone record, reminding us that even in droppings there are keys to the bigger story. Sculptures of vanished time. In the Chinese province of Guizhou, an unusual stone valley called Yelang was created. It was built by the artist, cartoonist, and Professor Sun Pei Lun, who dedicated more than 20 years to this project. He created hundreds of sculptures, towers, and walls from stone across about 185,000 square meters. The complex features artificial castles, reservoirs, and rock-carved faces along alleys. Local stonemasons participated, learning from the author a technique of building without blueprints and handling stones as if making simple fences. This method preserved the rock's natural shapes and irregularities, using accessible, eco-friendly local limestone. The idea for the Yelang Valley came to the artist after a visit to the United States, where he saw the Crazy Horse Memorial. Pei Lun decided to create a similar project in China to commemorate the vanished Yelang tribe, which lived on this land almost 2,000 years ago. No written sources remain from the ancient city, and the valley became an attempt to restore their memory through art. Today, the complex is a cultural center. University buildings now border the valley, and students assist Pei Lun with construction and upkeep. The project blends archaeology, architecture, and memory. The Yelang Valley has become an example of how modern people can restore the past, not through discoveries, but through their own idea of what might have been forgotten. The oldest image of a ghost. The British Museum has found the oldest image of a ghost on a 3,500-year-old Babylonian tablet from its collection. The drawing was noticed by Irvin Finkel, the senior curator of the Middle East Art Department. The tablet came to the museum back in the 19th century, along with thousands of other tablets from Babylon. The artifact is small enough to fit in your palm and is broken at the top, with at least half of the tablet missing. The curator knew the tablet described a cuneiform ghost exorcism ritual, but only noticed the drawing while researching for his book, The First Ghosts. A woman on a rope guides a bearded man's ghost into the afterlife. The thin lines are nearly invisible to the naked eye, but it's clearly a scene from the ritual described below. The person wants to perform the ghost exorcism. He needed to make man and woman figurines, give the man provisions, and the woman household items, then bury them at dawn, where the incantation was spoken. The incantation begins with an invocation to the Babylonian sun god Shamash, who accompanied the spirit to the afterlife. Unfortunately, the rest of the incantation has been lost. But it is known that the ritual was symbolic. The exorcist had to transfer the spirit into the figurine so that the spirit could leave with Shamash's blessing. The last line of the ritual says, "Do not look back." The curator says this warning was probably for the figurines entering the afterlife, but it might also have been for the exorcist, who may have been told not to look back when leaving the burial site. A terrifying creature from ancient deposits. It looks like a spoiled potato, only microscopic, just 1 millimeter long. Well, this creature really did lie in the lithospheric basement for about 500 million years. It's one of the very first beings to inhabit our planet. The prehistoric root vegetable was found in China, and over hundreds of millions of years, it had turned to dust. To study microscopic fossils, scientists scrape off ancient rock and pour vinegar on it. The limestone dissolves, but the remains stay. And what do they see? The name describes the creature quite accurately. Sarcophagi coronaris translates as wrinkled sack. The creature was round and soft with a large central hole surrounded by folds. Add a few spikes and openings and you have a prehistoric tuber. That's what makes it ironic that scientists have classified this thing as one of our possible relatives. Very distant, but still, Sarcophagi coronaris was placed on the evolutionary tree dangerously close to the ancestors of all deuterostomes, and deuterostomes are the forebears of all of us chordates. An Indian smile. It looks like someone scratched a funny face onto a school desk. But what we're actually looking at is a North American petroglyph from the 11th to 17th centuries. Part of the lion complex with 37 figures, the stone is marked by human and animal prints, and this figure is distinct for its horns, feathers, and long palms. Scientists debate its meaning. Is it a shaman in ritual dress, a totem spirit, or simply a humorous self-portrait by the artist? We mostly have serious hunting and cosmogony scenes, but here there's a cartoonish grimace. This means the artist had room for irony and self-expression, not just for sacred subjects. A schoolgirl found a Bronze Age treasure. The young artifact seeker was searching a field near Royston in Hertfordshire in the southeast of England when she discovered an ancient axe. Archaeologists later arrived, recovered the remaining treasure, and sent it to the British Museum in London. 65 artifacts from around 1,300 before Christ were extracted from the field. Millie became interested in treasure hunting because of her father. They dug up about 20 items, but the site closed until archaeologists arrived. In the future, the young treasure hunter plans to go out with her father every Sunday in hopes of finding another treasure. According to the British Broadcasting Corporation, Millie plans to split the monetary reward for the find equally with the landowner, and she will spend her share on archaeological equipment. Let me remind you, the Bronze Age is a period in human history when people became better at working with metals like copper and tin, and started making bronze from them. The Bronze Age covers the period from 2800 to 900 before Christ. It was during this time that people learned to make items and tools out of metal. Thanks to the channel, you can explore our ancestors' history even further back than the Stone or Bronze Age. A book with a surprise, a Bible with a secret compartment for a firearm, is a unique combination of religious text and the art of weaponry. This unusual artifact was made for the Venetian Doge Francesco Morosini in the 17th century. A hidden mechanism concealed a miniature firearm in the book with a silk bookmark as the trigger. It's hard to say whether Morosini used this Bible as intended, but he was known for his sharp mind and caution, which may have contributed to his long life. The Doge lived to the age of 74, which was quite a respectable age for that time. This Bible combined the engineering skill of the era and shows how powerful people of that time sought to combine means of self-defense with everyday objects. An earthquake hit Cyprus over 1,600 years ago. Archaeologists examined remains found during an excavation of a former market in ancient Kourion. It turned out that a fairly healthy man, aged 27 to 30, died as a result of the building collapsing during the earthquake in the middle of the 4th century AD. Scientists managed to find numerous fatal fractures of the skull, arms, and ribs caused by the collapse of stone walls. This happened in the vicinity of the modern city of Limassol. Kourion, in southwest Cyprus, was first settled in the Neolithic and Chalcolithic periods. However, as an urban center, Kourion seems to have formed by the 13th century before Christ. During the first millennium before Christ, the city was several times under the control of the Assyrians, Egyptians, Persians, and Ptolemies, until at the end of the 1st century before Christ, it was finally annexed to the Roman Empire. In the 4th century AD, the city suffered from a series of strong earthquakes, the most powerful of which occurred around 365 AD, and it was almost completely destroyed and rebuilt. It finally ceased to exist during the Byzantine era. The ancient city ruins drew travelers, researchers, and amateur archaeologists well before modern field archaeology existed. This was largely due to the picturesque location of the Acropolis, as well as the large number of ruins and rock-cut tombs, which attracted many people searching for precious artifacts or antiques to resell to collectors. Belize ruled the jungles of Karakol as the first king for nearly 40 years. Arlen and Diana, an archaeologist couple, excavated stairways, marketplaces, and dams until they reached the heart of the Khan complex, the heavenly place. Under thicker slabs, they found a narrow passage that led to a chamber painted with cinnabar. On the floor was a skeleton, its shoulders draped with jade beads. Nearby were 11 painted vessels, carved bone tubes, a mosaic mask, and shells from pandalus, the color of raw meat. The stela's hieroglyphs have long named the city's first ruler as Tekabchak, the hand of thunder. Now the text matches the bone. The dating is about 350, just 30 years after the ascension, in 331. Karakol was actually an independent power before the famed arrival of Teo and Tiakan's envoys in 378. He didn't awaken due to outside influence. He was already ruling, trading, and collecting tribute. The items around the body tell their own story. Jade signifies royal blood, cinnabar represents sacrificial power, pandylus shells show Carib trade, and thin bone tubes were used by priests inhaling cocoa powder before rituals. These aren't random items, but portraits of the state collected in its founder's personal capsule. For scientists, this is not just a skeleton, but the first chapter of Karakol's history, hidden by Liana for almost 1,500 years, an ancient treasury beneath a restroom. Luciano Fagiano is the owner of a building located in the central part of Lecce, Italy. He planned to open an Italian-style trattoria there. Although the building was recently renovated with a new heating system, there were still sewage problems. Luciano planned to open the establishment on the first floor and live with his family upstairs. He asked his 2 sons to help solve the problem. He initially thought the process would take a week, but it took longer. In 2000, they broke through the floor and found the broken pipe. Fagiano first found a false floor, then the real one. His wife was unaware of the massive project he had begun, just as she didn't know he involved his 12-year-old son, who helped lower a rope into a small hole and dig where others couldn't reach. Naturally, after a while, Anna Maria noticed her son's clothes were getting unusually dirty, and the neighbors started paying attention to the strange things happening in the house and the fact that piles of rubble were constantly being taken out. When officials visited the address at 56 Via Ascanio Grange, all of Fagiano's activities were suspended. According to official Italian law, his actions were considered unauthorized archaeological excavations. The interesting search for the sewer pipe continued a year later, but this time, a professional archaeologist was involved in the process, and their joint efforts produced good results. A treasure trove containing thousands of artifacts was discovered. including ancient ceramics, ornaments, prayer bottles, old frescoes, and more. A single toilet concealed a rich history, with ancient items and utensils made by the first Greek settlers gathered beneath it. Excavations uncovered an ancient Mesopotamia tomb, a Roman granary, cisterns, and chambers used by nuns to prepare the deceased. The diverse collection is due to Lich's unique location in Italy, where Greeks, Romans, Ottomans, Normans, and Lombards all once lived. Mr. Fagiano fixed the sewage system and authorities confiscated the artifacts. Luciano opened his own archaeological museum in 2008, and it is the only private museum in Lecce. Visitors can explore the discovered underground rooms, and to see the historical layers, all you have to do is look down through the glass floor. Twice eaten, Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, about 1.8 million years ago. Archaeologists discovered two distinct bite mark sets on early human bones. The first were wide, jagged notches, like chisel marks left by a crocodile. Above them were narrow punctures and long, shallow scratches, typical of a big cat, a leopard, or a similar predator. So first people were caught by a crocodile, and then a land predator got to the remains. Unfortunately, in those times, this was a common situation in the early savanna. Water attracts prey and predators alike. Such finds challenged the belief that humans were always hunters. 2 million years ago, humans were just one of the elements in the food chain. At one stage of evolution, we were often resources ourselves. A standard trip to get water for a human was a chance to find food, and just as much of a chance to be eaten by a predator. This is a good indicator of how dangerous the watering hole was before humans became top predators. Granatovi Voron. In one of the fields of Cornwall, a couple of metal detector enthusiasts stumbled upon a signal, pure gold. A flat piece with triangular garnet inlays appeared first, looking like a typical 7th century Anglo-Saxon ring. Then, just steps away, something even rarer was found. A raven's head figurine weighing 57 grams, featuring neat nostril cutouts and side slots for inlays. The left eye still shines with a garnet, while the right one, unfortunately, is missing. Analysis showed the gold is almost pure, with a tiny addition of silver and copper. For strength, the craftsman covered the surface with feather-like patterns of micro-grained beads and set garnet triangles between them. The style matches the famous Sutton Hoo, but the technique is more intricate, the result of a later royal workshop in East Anglia. Its purpose is unclear. It's too heavy for an earring and too short for a brooch. Scholars think it may be part of a ceremonial standard or ritual staff handle, carried into battle during the king's inauguration. The raven's symbolism is intentional. It's linked to Odin, the god of war and wisdom, whose 2 ravens brought him battlefield news. The finds are now in the treasure procedure at the British Museum. If the expert commission confirms the dating and uniqueness, the item will be added to the list of top Anglo-Saxon jewelry pieces. A rare 2,000-year-old coin was found when 11-year-old Lil Krutokop and her family joined archaeological excavations at the City of David National Park, a trip they'll remember for years. While sifting through the soil, she found a round, shiny object that was an ancient, rare coin. According to the Israel Antiquities Authority, Leal discovered a 2,000-year-old silver shekel weighing about 14 grams, decorated with ancient engravings and inscriptions about the Jewish revolt. One side of the coin reads Israeli shekel and second year, marking the second year of the revolt. The other side says Holy Jerusalem in ancient Hebrew, plus a word linked to the high priest's temple headquarters. Dr. Robert Kuhl, head of the coin department at the Israel Antiquities Authority, said that this is a rare coin, since out of the many thousands of coins discovered to date, only about 30 coins from the period of the Great Revolt were made of silver. According to experts, the coins were made by Jewish rebels to demonstrate their commitment to the struggle for their people's independence. Let me remind you that the Jewish-Roman War began after Antipater the Idumean started his brutal rule in Jerusalem. A year after the Romans took full control of the Syrian province in 63 AD. The Sultan's treasures, the Well of Hell, or the Barhout Hole, is a mysterious sinkhole in Yemen surrounded by legends and myths. The locals believed that at the bottom of the well were the Sultan's treasures, guarded by jinn and the dead, and that a cemetery-like smell emanated from there. Scientific research has confirmed some of these legends. Speleologists finally decided to explore the sinkhole, taking samples from its bottom. The sinkhole has a conical shape. Its diameter at the surface is about 30 meters, and it widens to 120 meters at the bottom. The well is 112 meters deep. The upper layer is porous and lets water through, while below the layer becomes denser and impermeable, which leads to the formation of 4 waterfalls and stalagmites. The Sultan's treasures turned out to be cave pearls, rare formations made of calcium carbonate that form around a grain of sand or a piece of wood. In the bar hut, they have an emerald golden color which probably misled ancient observers. Snakes and arthropods live at the bottom of the sinkhole. The grave-like smell described by local residents is caused by the decomposing bodies of animals, mostly birds, that fly into the well seeking shelter from the heat. After descending to the bottom, they can't fly back up because of the great depth. There are 2 main hypotheses about the origin of the well. The first is that it is the former vent of an underground volcano that became extinct long ago. And the second is that it is a natural well formed by the erosion of underground water layers over millions of years. Most likely, the Barkuta well was formed in the second way, which explains its unusual structure and contents. A tomb that survived earthquakes. On the territory of the ancient city of Pasargadae, the capital of the Achaemenid Empire, there is a tomb that is traditionally associated with the name of Cyrus the Great. The structure was built around 530 before Christ and remains one of the most enduring monuments of ancient Iran. For 2,500 years, it has survived many earthquakes without losing structural integrity. Studies have shown that the architects used principles similar to modern seismic isolation technologies. The tomb's foundation has several limestone layers. The lower layer is bonded with limestone mortar, ash, and sand, while the upper blocks are placed without rigid fixation. There is a layer that allowed the structure to slightly slide during underground tremors, which reduced the load and prevented the stonework from being destroyed. The tomb's upper section consists of large blocks joined by metal clamps. Despite its simple shape, a cubic chamber on a 6-stepped base, the structure is a well-designed engineering system. Modeling by Islamic Azad University showed that during strong ground vibrations, the upper part can shift relative to the base, absorbing impact energy. No conclusive evidence confirms Cyrus was buried in this mausoleum. The tomb was looted in ancient times, and the epitaph cited in sources hasn't survived, despite debates over the buried individual's identity. The structure remains one of the oldest examples of earthquake-resistant architecture and is evidence that Achaemenid engineers understood the nature of earthquakes much more deeply than is commonly believed. An infant with a bronze bracelet. Researchers say the burials are from the Unitais culture, dating to about 2,000 to 1,500 years before our era. A wire bronze bracelet found in the grave suggests the infant's high social status in prehistoric society during the early Bronze Age. In Central Europe, the Unitais culture succeeded the Belbeker culture, which saw a major population influx from northeastern Europe. It was formed around 2300 before Christ and lasted until the middle of the second millennium before Christ. Most settlements of this culture had only a few wooden houses with straw-covered pointed roofs built by Unitais culture representatives. The burials are mostly uniform, usually inhumations with the deceased crouched on their right side. Cremated remains are rarely found. The burial inventory was mostly ceramic vessels, with some stone and bone tools or weapons, and occasionally copper or bronze items. During one excavation, scientists found a round, stone-lined pit just over 60 centimeters wide, containing an infant's remains at its center. Archaeologists noted that burials of such young children from the Bronze Age are quite rare, despite the presumed high infant mortality rate in prehistoric societies. The bronze bracelets found were too large and heavy for the child to have worn in life. Scientists suggested that the grieving mother might have simply given her deceased child valuable jewelry as part of the burial goods. However, In the strictly hierarchical society of the Uinta culture, only a few people could afford to bury their dead with bronze items, which reflected social status. Apparently, the bracelets indicate that the child belonged to the upper class of society. The Golden Horse. Not long ago, news once again spread on social media that near Anapa, Russia, they supposedly found the legendary Golden Horse of King Mithridates Eupator. It's noteworthy that similar reports already appeared in 2021, turning out to be an April Fool's joke. Now, however, the excavations taking place in the area of Anapskaya Stanica have once again sparked discussions about this story. During rescue operations at a future kindergarten site, archaeologists found a burial ground about 2,000 years old. One grave contained both human and horse remains, others held horse skeletons, glass and ceramic vessels, beads, weapons, and harnesses. The items, including beads made of amber, carnelian, and faience, indicate the local tribe's connections with the ancient world. Among the finds, a scarab symbolizing rebirth was noted. Ancient Egyptians valued glass vessels, which spread across the Roman Empire's periphery due to improved glass-blowing techniques. Despite the excitement, there's no proof this is truly Mithridates' golden horse. Scientists point out that legends often grow, and a noble's rich burial can naturally gain fantastic elements over time. The skull of America's oldest leper. American anthropologists examined a skull from Petit Moustique in the Caribbean and identified it as that of a woman aged 20 to 25. She died in the late 18th or early 19th century. Scientists found she had bone changes from leprosy. This is the oldest such discovery made in America. Researchers suggested a leprosarium may have operated on the island. Leprosy has been known since ancient times, mentioned in writings from ancient and Eastern civilizations. It is a chronic infectious disease caused by Microbacterium leprae. A breakthrough in leprosy treatment came in the 1940s with the development of diapson, which halted disease progression. The results of the research showed that the skull most likely belonged to a woman of mixed origin, who was about 20 to 25 years old at the time of her death. Anthropologists found paleontological changes on some bones, possibly caused by diseases like tuberculosis, leprosy, or syphilis. It's a good thing that nowadays medicine has already defeated many terrible diseases. The Golden Ring, Jerusalem, the city of David. Archaeologists found a small 2,300-year-old gold ring under the floor of a late Roman, early Byzantine building. That is, it dates back to the period of the Second Temple and Hellenistic influence. It is smooth, without any inlays. It's modest. The ring was not lying separately, but in a filled technical layer of the foundation, with construction filler immediately above it, which means it was placed there during the laying of the foundation, not lost by accident. And this is not an isolated case. Within a year, a second similar ring and several small ornaments were also found under the foundation in the same area. Researchers recall a Hellenistic custom. Engaged girls or their families would bury jewelry and children's items in the foundation of a new house, a symbol of adulthood and a plea for protection. It was small, female-associated, and daily worn gold now turned to artifact. In the Israel Antiquities Authority lab, the metal is analyzed for alloy, checked for garnet or other stones, and compared with similar items to determine its origin. The remains of the most ancient human ancestor. Scientists found new Australopithecus sediba fossils in South Africa. He lived around 2 million years ago and is seen as a distant ancestor of modern humans. A skeleton fragment helped researchers learn more about this creature and settle the debate over how it moved. Analysis found Australopithecus walked upright like humans, but climbed trees like monkeys. Scientists were able to discover the lower backbones of the hominid, and they noticed the curved spine. Its shape indicated that this species spent a lot of time walking on two legs, but also used its upper limbs for climbing. Bones were preserved in rock from a South African cave. Analysis showed that they belonged to a female individual, whom scientists named Isa, which means protector in Swahili. They also determined that Australopithecines had 5 lumbar vertebrae, just like modern humans. The structure of the lumbar region clearly demonstrates this. How our ancestors moved is hard to determine because scientists rarely find connected vertebrae. Isolated ones, are unsuitable for this research. The South African remains have been called the missing link in human evolution studies. They showed that Australopithecus had pronounced lordosis, while special bony processes indicated a strong muscular corset necessary for climbing trees. Scientists concluded that Australopithecus was an intermediate link between great apes and modern humans, combining traits of both groups in its behavior, upright walking and tree climbing. A manuscript surprise, opening a medieval folio and finding an unexpected attraction instead of dusty prayers. Some pages flare up with huge initials, while others are covered with Turonian notes, an ancient shorthand that only a couple of dozen specialists today are able to decipher. Across the globe, you find a page where letters form constellation shapes as if blending a school primer with the night sky. You turn the page and notice a small scribble in the corner. The scribe was quickly testing his pen and writing short poems about birds. Wide margins fill half the space. Why waste pricey parchment? The emptiness here isn't actually empty. Medieval students wrote marginalia in these margins, which later helped protect books from mold. The humid air would start to damage the edges of the book, while the text remained untouched. There's also a completely unexpected format, the bat book. The almanac hung upside down from the belt, unfolded to show a calendar, lunar phases, and a list of saints for the year. The purple spots in the corners are scars from mold. The manuscript was once stored in damp conditions, and microbes managed to eat away at the pages. Now scientists literally count the fungal growth rings, like on an old tree. Just imagine how much information is hidden in these cosmetic defects. They use these to date the library's moves and revise our view of the era's climate. Such visual Easter eggs turn the manuscript into a quest, not just a text collection. Each note or unexpected bookmark connects us directly to those who wrote, read, and used this book centuries ago. The Prambanan Temple Complex. According to the most reliable data, the Indian temple complex Prambanan was built around the 10th century AD. Rakai Pika X, ruler of the Mataram kingdom, sponsored the construction of these magnificent buildings. Given their age, it's unsurprising that only fragments remain today. In the early 1900s, the Dutch restored the temples. An interesting legend surrounds the complex's construction. The temple with 1,000 statues was built at the request of Jograng, whom Prince Bandung Bondowoso loved. Jograng, unable to accept or refuse his proposal, set a condition. Bandung could marry her only if he built a temple and 1,000 statues in one night. To her surprise, the young man almost succeeded, and Jograng, not wanting to keep her promise, decided to deceive him. To imitate the coming of dawn, she enlisted the help of the locals, who lit many bonfires for light. The enraged Bandung stopped at 999 statues, and he cursed the deceiver so that she turned to stone forever, becoming the missing 1,000th statue. A mammoth tusk at the bottom of the ocean. At a depth of 3 kilometers in the Pacific Ocean, a mammoth tusk was suddenly discovered, and scientists are trying to figure out how it ended up there. The find was made during a deep-sea expedition. In 2019, a team from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute was studying an underwater mountain located 300 kilometers off the coast of California. With a special camera at 3,070 meters deep, scientists explored the seabed and found something like an elephant tusk. 2 years later, they returned to retrieve it. Specialists confirmed the meter-long specimen was a mammoth tusk, not an elephant tusk. The deep sea's cold, high-pressure environment preserved it well, giving researchers a chance to study it more closely. The scientists said the tusk was from a Columbian mammoth, which lived in North America since the Middle Pleistocene. Researchers are currently continuing to study the specimen. They expect that a computed tomography scan will reveal the 3-dimensional internal structure of the tusk and provide more data about the animal, such as its age. The team believes that this may be the oldest well-preserved mammoth tusk ever found in this region of North America. The researchers plan to sequence the ancient DNA from the tusk to learn more about how mammoths adapted to North America. A stash in the garden. While gardening in Hampshire, England, A married couple discovered a hoard of 70 gold coins from the Tudor era. The discovery occurred in Milford-on-Sea, near the ancient Christchurch Priory. British museum specialists confirmed the coins were authentic and dated them to the 15th and 16th centuries. The earliest specimens date back to the 1420s, during the reign of Henry VI, while most are from the 1530s, the time of Henry VIII. Some coins still have the initials of his wives, Catherine of Aragon and Jane Seymour. Numismatists estimated the hoard's value at $230,000, about the cost of a house at that time. Historians say the gold was hidden by a church official or wealthy merchant during the dissolution of the monasteries, when Henry VIII seized church property and assets. The find's location shows it was near religious centers during secularization, when many clergymen sought to protect their savings. After the official registration of the find, the coins were temporarily stored at the British Museum, and later they were put up for auction in Zurich. The hoard is unique because it was found on private land, giving the discovering family full ownership rights. The story became one of Britain's most sensational numismatic discoveries in decades. The sword of Pharaoh Ramesses II. Archaeologists are making more and more discoveries in northern Egypt. Recently, they found the sword of Pharaoh Ramesses II there. Excavations were carried out in the El Buhaira province, where architectural blocks were found that were once part of military barracks and weapons warehouses. Personal belongings of soldiers from that era were also found, confirming Fort El Abkane's importance as a key point for the Egyptian army. The sword that was found is made of bronze and has a cartouche with the name of Ramses II. Weapons, amulets, hygiene items, and a cow burial were also discovered. Ramses II, who ruled over 60 years, is considered one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs. A time capsule in a cesspit. Archaeologists from the Netherlands, working in the center of Alkmaar, discovered impressive items in an old cesspit that shed light on life in the 15th century. Among the discoveries, a pair of birch wooden shoes stands out, even though birch doesn't grow in the country. This is a rare clog, which, according to archaeologist Nancy de Jong, has a complex design with a double heel. Only 44 such specimens are known in the Netherlands and Belgium, and most of them are less well preserved. Scientists also recovered a finely crafted oak grain measure from the pit, a unique find, as only fragments of such containers had been discovered in the area before. Until now, they were known mainly from historical records. Now, researchers have obtained physical evidence of the existence of such measures in everyday urban life. The cesspit itself dates back to 1458. At first, it served as a latrine, and later it was abandoned during the construction of new houses. Scientists note that the residents of that time were already practicing a circular economy, reusing or recycling materials and often burning waste for heating. A Neanderthal child's tooth. Paleoanthropologists found a Neanderthal child's milk tooth in Iran. Radiocarbon dating showed he lived about 43,000 to 41,000 years ago. This is the second discovery of Neanderthal remains in Iran. The extinction of Neanderthals is one of the key problems faced by paleoanthropologists. In 2014, advanced accelerator mass spectrometry enabled scientists to obtain 40 reliable dates for major Mousterian-era archaeological sites and Neanderthals in Europe. The tooth is a lower left deciduous canine and consists of a well-preserved crown and about 1/4 of the root. Paleoanthropologists found no caries or enamel hypoplasia during the study. The tooth's surface was worn with exposed dentin. Morphological analysis identified it as belonging to a 6-year-old Neanderthal child. Radiocarbon dating revealed Neanderthals lived in the central Zagros around 43,000 to 41,000 years ago. The mysterious iron mask. Archaeologists in Turkey have discovered a fragment of an iron mask about 1,800 years old. The discovery occurred during excavations of a fortified structure in Adrianopolis, near present-day Eskipazar. Researchers think the mask was part of Roman cavalry armor found at the Adrianopolis site. Archaeologists also discovered 14 scattered structures, including 2 baths, 2 churches, a defensive structure, rock tombs, a theater, an arched domed structure, a monumental cult niche, fortress walls, villas, other buildings, and some cult areas. Adrianopolis in Paphlagonia, northern Turkey, was a key center in the Hellenistic, Roman, and early Byzantine eras. Because of the numerous mosaics with animal images found here, it is called the Black Sea Zeugma. The treasures of the Alans. The southern edge of Alcancala, already on the archaeological register, drew much more interest after the 2025 excavations. At the bottom of a narrow stone-lined tomb, a thin gold pendant with 5 almandine inlays sparkled. To the right was a glass bowl the color of melting glacier. Chemical composition showed Byzantine or Persian origin. Among the horse's bones, bronze salia were found, and along the warrior's legs, a scabbard with stylized griffins, typical of Sasanian art. The burial dates to the late 9th century, when Alania controlled the passes between the Black Sea and Caspian. The richness of the inventory suggests that we are looking at a person from the top of society, possibly a representative of the rulers of Dorial. But the jeweler's technique indicates that the pendant was made locally. The gold contains a characteristic admixture of platinum from the Caspian placers, and the granulation is set on an adhesive composition known from Pakhar finds. The tomb challenges the old view of nomads as just intermediaries. Alan's society at the end of the first millennium appeared more complex. Their own jewelers, long-distance trade in glass, close ties with Iran and Byzantium, and most importantly, a desire to immortalize status in gold and horse harness. The Balearic sword made of bronze. The Balearic sword made of bronze was discovered by archaeologists on the island of Majorca in Spain. Preliminary dating showed that the weapon was made around 793 before Christ. The sword is just under 93 centimeters long and weighs 1 kilogram 650 grams. Its hilt and blade were cast from different alloys and then riveted together. Experts determined the weapon was likely a ceremonial sword, not intended for combat. However, if we take into account the fact that the sword was made about 3,200 years ago, it could have been presented as a gift. Experts say only 19 such ancient swords have been found worldwide, most outside archaeological context, discovered in later cultural layers. The sword discovered on Mallorca is distinguished by its triangular blade cross-section, and the round handle is equipped with a guard and a pommel. Back in ancient times, the blade broke in half, probably as a result of striking something hard. Scientists have yet to determine the purpose of these swords. Their unhardened blades indicate they weren't used in combat, but served as status symbols or for ceremonies. The sword's raw material came from Andalusia, a Roman road. In Manchester on Liverpool Road, they removed the asphalt for repairs, and just 40 centimeters below, a paved Roman road was revealed. The layers, like a cake slice, show original bedding, leveling, and gravel repairs. Regular maintenance prevented potholes. Archaeologists say it's the best Roman discovery downtown in 20 years. The road once led to a nearby fort. They also unearthed household items, ceramic shards, and decorative glass, everyday debris preserved under the modern road. After conservation, the site will be documented, items cleaned and displayed. The Skull of Kyork in Russia. A Volgodonsk worker found mysterious animal remains in a load of construction sand at the site. There were bones. Markov jokingly called the remains the Skull of Kyork. It's not easy to identify bones from a photo. One can only assume it's definitely a fragment of a skull. It might look like the back part of the skull of some hoofed animal, but considering the scale, it could turn out to be part of a cat's skull. The photo shows large auditory bullae, and what looks like horns is actually part of the zygomatic arches. Nothing devilish here. In his opinion, the bone is relatively ancient. Its age could be several tens of thousands of years. Such preservation is typical for bones found in the river deposits of the Don. After getting a photo of the remains with a scale and ruler, scientists confirmed it was a cat's brain case. Gears of mystery. The oldest computer on the planet, the Antikythera mechanism, has always seemed like something out of an Indiana Johnson movie. Bronze wheels, a handle, a dial, and an eclipse, the ancient National Aeronautics and Space Administration in a box. A recent 3D simulation broke down the legend to its teeth. Scientists precisely recreated every gear and ran the virtual device through a full calendar cycle. The result was shocking. After 4 months of continuous operation, the teeth started to catch. The load increased, and by the 6th month, the digital copy simply jammed. The error wasn't in the software. The model considers all casting defects, tooth pitch, and axle backlash measured on the actual artifact. If the numbers are right, the original mechanism couldn't reliably predict eclipses years ahead. Enthusiasts said the desktop planetarium toy now seems more believable. Turning the handle shows the sun and moon moving. It's impressive for an elite audience, but insufficient for a priest astronomer's daily calculations. There's another option. The bronze spent 2,000 years underwater. Corrosion ate away fractions of a millimeter and disrupted the perfect synchronization. If that's true, the original device worked perfectly, and this is just its rusted screenshot. To test the hypothesis, engineers must create a copy with uniform teeth and repeat the chronomarathon. Despite ongoing debates, the Antikythera mechanism remains as puzzling as a Rubik's Cube. Only antiquity has added mystique. Either we underestimate ancient engineers, or we overestimate our own desire to see advanced technology in every mystery. An ancient iron dagger. An amateur archaeologist from Switzerland discovered a richly decorated dagger that belonged to a Roman soldier 2,000 years ago. Later at the same site, a group of archaeologists found hundreds of artifacts. On a lost battlefield where Roman legionaries fought Rhaetian warriors as the Roman Empire sought to consolidate power in the area. Archaeologists think a legionary may have purposely buried the dagger after the battle to show gratitude for the victory. Only 4 daggers with cross-shaped hilts have been found in former Roman territories, and this one was discovered in an unusual place. While still a dental student, Lucas Schmidt began exploring near the mountain village of Tiefenkastel in Graubünden, southeastern Switzerland, in spring 2018. In 2003, archaeologists found traces of the ancient Roman army nearby and assumed the area had already been cleared of artifacts. Schmidt used a metal detector to search for artifacts. He found a silver and brass inlaid dagger on a small hill near the river gorge in spring 2019. At first, his metal detector picked up a very weak signal indicating a small object, but when he started digging, he realized the signal must be coming from a large object. It was just buried relatively deep. The amateur archaeologist ultimately found the dagger about 30 centimeters below the surface. The disappearance of the oldest civilization. 900 years ago, one of the world's oldest civilizations, Cahokia, disappeared. A new study has cast doubt on the previous theory that drought and crop failure were the cause. The Cahokia Mounds, located near modern-day St. Louis, were a thriving settlement with a population of about 50,000 people. By 1,400, this place was deserted, and the reasons for the mass exodus remain a mystery to archaeologists who have conducted soil analyses of Cahokia. After studying the carbon isotopes left by plants that grew during the period of mass departure, the results showed that the ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13 remained stable. This shows there were no major changes in local vegetation and does not support the crop failure theory. Residents of Cahokia were resourceful and likely skilled in irrigation and crop storage. In addition, their diet was diverse, including fish, birds, deer, fruits, and nuts, which ensured survival even if some food sources were lost. So why did they leave Cahokia? Archaeologists suggest that it was a long process caused by external factors. To better understand the reasons, scientists plan to create a database of paleobotanical evidence and conduct experiments growing ancient crops in controlled conditions. Golden jewelry from space. Among the sparkling gold and treasures of the Iberian Bronze Age, 2 unassuming objects, a corroded bracelet and a rusty hemispherical item, could prove the most valuable. Decorated with gold, turned out to be not just metal artifacts. Researchers found out that they were forged not from metal mined from the earth, but from iron of meteorites that fell from the sky. This discovery was published in January and proves that metalworking technologies in Iberia more than 3,000 years ago were much more advanced than previously thought. The so-called Treasure of Valena, which is a collection of 66 gold items, was found in 1963 in Alicante, Spain. It is considered one of the rarest examples of Bronze Age jewelry on the Iberian Peninsula and in all of Europe. However, the collection's true age was hard to determine due to two artifacts, a rod and a hemisphere, likely parts of a scepter, sword handle, or bracelet. These items looked like iron, raising questions among archaeologists. The Iron Age on the Iberian Peninsula began only around 850 before Christ, whereas the gold materials and treasures are dated to the period between 1500 and 1200 before Christ. However, iron didn't always need to be extracted from earthly ores. Some Bronze Age artifacts, including the famous iron dagger of Tutankhamun, were made from meteoritic iron, which was highly valued in ancient times. After conducting mass spectrometric analysis of the artifact samples, the results showed that both items were made from meteoritic iron, which solved the mystery of their origin. Rate the video with a thumbs up or down and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Goodbye, everyone.